It's Orkin time, or crumping, or what have you. Either way, Kill Team reboot, thus team reboots. So we reboot all these team overview videos. And this time around, I want to start with the beginning, where bespoke concepts established themselves in version 2 of Kill Team, with one of the teams that, despite everyone claiming that later released bespoke teams were way more broken, they kept finding their way into the top 3 of many big tournaments throughout the year, and that team will be the Kommandos. I know you can't see them here, that's an issue with them being purple, the sneakiest of colors, but trust me, they're there. And for those of you that like their team to be a bit more robust than an elite team in size, while still having a bit of durability, these walking mushrooms might be enjoyable. A bit of ranged, a bit of melee, and a whole boatload of insanity. So, before we dive in, if you're new to the channel and enjoy tabletop content like Kill Team and possibly other formats, don't forget to hit that subscribe, maybe a variety of thumb as well. And if you're interested in continuing the conversation, there is a link to our Discord community in the description below. Now, let's get stuck in with the boys. Firstly, Kill Team shifts around a lot. Supposedly there will be rebalancing of many of the teams involved over time. What we will talk about here may be different a year from now. Please try and do your due diligence in checking the Warhammer community page for any updated data slates. Now, when I think orcs, I think full-blown melee. I think in your face at all times. I hear the wog in my bones. The Kommandos aren't exactly this. They lean more towards the cunning side of the orcish family tree. The shadows call to them. And because of this, their faction rule that will apply to most of their operatives, barring the team mascot Bomb Squig, is called Throat Slitters, a powerful ability allowing the orcs to charge even when in conceal. This might sound simple to the uninitiated, but a big issue when charging and fighting an enemy is that if you win, you tend to just be out there in the open, ripe for being ended from afar. But because these orcs don't need to go to engage before charging, they have the ability to get in close to an enemy that happens to be in cover itself. They can then fight, as fight is not restricted by conceal, and then they can win, because that's what orcs do. And then they can use the same cover the enemy was benefiting from to protect themselves from retaliation. A brilliant strategy from these scrappy orcs. Ploys-wise, they benefit from a grab bag of options across the board. From the strategy phase, we have Daka Daka Daka, giving ranged weapons the punishing rule. This is the one that upgrades a miss to a hit if a crit is retained. Very beneficial for some of those operatives that carry the more high saturation weapons, as most of them only hit on 4s. They also have access to a wog because they are orcs, so this has to happen. This provides all melee weapons with balanced for the tasty free reroll. A good option in the big melee go phases, as you can always view this as a sort of discount on needing to spend points on command reroll instead if this ploy is inactive. Skulk About is a solid defensive option. It allows Kommandos with the Conceal order to retain 1 defense dice as a success without needing to roll on it. This stacks with other possible ways of retaining dice, like cover. This feels like a ploy that will be consistently churned in early turning points, as orcs tend to have good health, but horrible saves. The question will be when to use it, as the bulk of your team will probably try and stay stealthy early, so if you don't plan on getting shot, could probably conserve command points instead. Shh is a strat phase move function. These are powerful. Sadly, not doable in the first turning point, but it allows all Kommandos to perform a free dash in the strat phase, so long as they are outside of 6 inches from enemies and are in conceal. Depending on setup, a solid turn 2 concept. If you get initiative, bringing some operatives in close to guarantee a chain of charges will occur is always great. Failing initiative would allow you to pull back against melee teams, forcing them to have to close distance for yet another round. I always love position adjusting ploys, so much stronger than some people expect them to be. From the firefight ploys, Just a Scratch allows any non-grot, non-squig operative the ability to fully ignore a single dice worth of normal damage. This is damage inflicted by using the dice, I believe. Any potential side effects from special abilities could still happen, although That mostly comes from crit dice, which this wouldn't help against. Crumpum is used at the end of the firefight phase and allows the commando player to select one operative to immediately perform a free fight action. So strong and very versatile strategically. For instance, you could charge an enemy on an objective and bring them low in health, but stick in combat to avoid external ranged attacks. And then, in the final moments before the change of turning point, kill them with a single hit, potentially turning control of an objective in your favor for scoring in a very safe moment of the game. A good option for a predominantly 2 APL team. Cunning but Brutal has a couple prerequisites. It must be used during the first attack dice of a fight that the orc pushes. It must be a normal attack, and it must be used to strike. The operative, up until this moment, must have been in conceal during the activation and had charged prior to the fight. This normal success dice gets upgraded to a critical success instead, and will provide all the damage as well as any special rules that will come from using a critical success. Could be great for the Breacha Boy with his shocking melee weapon, but I'm sure any orc out there wouldn't mind an extra crit. And even if the orc does roll some crits, it could pocket those for later parries if it needs. Shake It Off can be used in 2 possible moments: when a commando activates or when a commando has its APL modified. This ploy negates any APL stat change on that operative until the end of its next activation. There is a lot of great possibility here. If an opponent attempts to stun an orc to gain an APL advantage on a point for control, this could put a complete stop to that plan. It can either counter it in the moment or shut it down before it even happens, making the opponent have to choose a different path to take to try and gain the upper hand. Equipment-wise, the orcs bring some fun to the table. You have your standard issue choppas. Sadly, no large rusty knife for the squig or grot. They're just too unwieldy. All the other operatives gain a melee option: 3 attacks, 3 to hit, 4/5 damage line. For fist-based operatives, which many are, this is a great boon, and it resonates well with the team's concealed charge, probably a guaranteed pickup in most matches. Remember, this is an option. If an operative has a better weapon, you can just use that. The harpoon is also a non-grot, non-squig ranged option. 4 attacks, hitting on 4s with a 4/5 damage line, limited range of 8 inches, lethal 5+ with stun. Not a lot of attacks, and the 4+ to hit hurts, but the lethal 5 and stun with a 4/5 damage line is a bit scary to most operatives. Dynamite allows a non-grot squig operative to throw a once per battle ranged attack. 5 attacks, 4+ to hit, 4/5 damage line. A range limit of 4 inches, a blast range of 1 inch, a heavy limit of only allowing for reposition, and the saturate ability, negating possible cover save retention. A good damage line and a solid number of attacks, but the lack of blast range or pierce might limit this to only really being effective against horde teams. Collapsible stocks augment the total range on weapons like the Daka Shuda short-range variant, the Shaka pistol, and the Slugga. It adds an extra 4 inches. This ups the Daka Shuda to 10 inches, and the Slugga and Shaka to 12 inches. Depending on map, this could be almost a guaranteed pickup, as the Shaka pistol and close-range Shuda are very powerful in specific situations, and many of the operatives will have Sluggas equipped. If you can't quite get to the enemy, but still feel that you need to dump damage, the expanded threat range, when merged with things like the balanced range ploy, will be quite useful. All these ploys and equipment push and pull the commandos in interesting directions strategically, but let's take a look at the operatives that will be utilizing all these options. We'll go over the units individually here and then talk some team composition ideas. We start with the leader, the biggest and the strongest, the commando boss knob. Solid stat lines for APL, wounds, and move, of course with the subpar save stat you will see across the board for orcs. Options wise for gear, it is stuck with its Slugga, pretty standard issue for a middling pistol. The focus is on 2 potential melee weapons, the Big Choppa or Power Claw. Similar attacks and hit stats, but with slightly more crit damage on the claw, and a key difference in weapon rules. Punishing for the choppa, allowing it to upgrade a miss to a hit if a crit is retained. Brutal for the claw, preventing blocking from non-crit dice. The big choppa can be fine, but at 4 attacks on 3+, the punishing rule might not feel too useful without the help of a lethal rule. The claw would be more universally apt, although I always bring up that brutal is a double-edged sword. Since the opponent can't block with normals, they can only attack, so fights tend to play out in damage exchanges, making it harder to lure an enemy into being weakened but surviving to be killed later. Probably not that big of a deal with the sneaky orcs. Abilities-wise, Get It Done acts as an APL enhancement for an orc ally. No squig, however. The knob can't be in control range of an enemy and can't use this as a counteract function. It also can't target itself, so this specific action won't allow him to become a 4 APL orc. And the intended target must be visible to and within 6 inches of the knob, a useful ability. However, because it costs an action point to use, on average, this unit will probably forego this ability and simply perform mission tasks and damage dealing abilities with its 3 APL. But Turning Point 1 could be an ideal spot for using this, as the Kommandos will probably remain very stealthy during this phase. The Bomb Squig is a good boy, just the best boy. Also kind of horrifying. As the faction ability doesn't affect it, you will need to go to engage to charge with it, which isn't really an issue, as after you activate it, it will pretty much just be an engage forever. And that charge tends to be a one-way trip, but maybe not. At 5 wounds, this is definitely a glass cannon whose goal is going to be to charge an enemy and trigger its explosion. But again, maybe not. It has the explosive ranged attack, which uses the squig as its core target and blasting all enemies within 1 inch of it. 6 attacks per target, including the squig. 4+ to hit, 4/5 damage, limited to 1. You can perform this shoot action while within control range of an enemy, so from a surface level, this operative will seek to charge an enemy and blow up, but follow along for a second. It also has the boom ability, which lets it potentially use this explosive shoot action upon its incapacitation. You roll 2 dice, and if any result is a 4+, you can use the explosives if they haven't already been used. This operative is also limited to only using charge, dash, fight, reposition, and shoot during its activation. And as we said, when it is activated the first time in Turning Point 1, it goes to an engage order and it stays there. Hopefully its short height might prevent it from being just ripped apart after that activation. This means the squig is 100% not an objective donkey. It is a threat circle to the core. It is also expendable. This unit dying won't really interact with enemy scoring possibilities. All this said, you don't necessarily need to beeline towards blowing up. You can become obnoxious by charging enemies and fighting them. 4/5 damage in melee is nothing to joke about. Most horde units will go down in 2 hits, and putting an extra 4 or more damage to an elite could help out a bit, especially if that operative chooses to finish the squig off, taking the chance at a follow-up explosion, which could end its life. And take note that this explosive attack must still be rolled in full when it goes off. So even if the squig is fully alive and well and chooses to just ignite the explosion, with a little orcish luck, it could avoid all damage done to itself and just walk away unscathed. Just a best boy, such a good boy. A more standard Commando boy comes with a basic 2 APL and 10 wounds, the Orc Boy norm. It also comes with a standard slugga and choppa. Where it shines is in having access to the smoke and stun grenades from the equipment list without needing to take them. During the course of a turning point, a Commando boy can use 1 smoke grenade and 1 stun grenade. Now, the limit info here is interesting, as stun grenades and smoke grenades can be used in the same activation. They don't limit each other. In theory, you could have this Commando boy get to a good position in turn 1. In turn 2, it could activate and throw a stun on an enemy and a smoke on itself, or anywhere else that might need to go. Hell, if its APL is enhanced in any way, it could run away after. A solid tactical unit with good melee qualities. The Breacher Boy is just fun. Standard range slugga, but it comes with a breach ram, solid damage and weapon rules, but the limited hit stat and attacks will probably need to be linked up with the balanced melee ploy for a big close range round, or to at least have someone else in combat to help it out. Abilities wise, it has the breach function. For an action point, a marker is placed within the operative's control range as close as possible to a piece of terrain that is also within that control range. This marker has a 1-inch area around it, and if a commando is within that range, the terrain it is near, so long as the terrain is no more than 1 inch thick, is now accessible to the operative. This action can be used during reposition or charge for 1 AP less, so free. It cannot be done if the breacha is within control range of an enemy at the time. A couple things. This mark does not seem to limit operatives that can use it to commandos alone. It would seem the hole in the wall could be a two-way street. In the Gallowdark, the walls claim to take precedence over all other rules that could let units past them. There are currently operatives that get around this, but they explicitly talk about the walls in the rules. This ability does not, so the assumption is that the Gallowdark walls are just too thick. Otherwise, this boy's ability, depending on map, can be very limited in options, leaving its strength to the 5/5 damage line melee weapon it carries. But in the instances where the breach ability could work, the outcome can certainly be devastating. Remember though, that when an operative uses an accessible terrain feature, it must spend an inch of movement in the process. It would make the 8-inch breach charge a 7-inch one through a wall. Still not a bad orc in a box combo, and it could possibly pair well with a heavy deployable wall from the equipment list. The Commando Burn-A-Boy is very straightforward. No special abilities, standard stats, it's just the gun, which is fantastic at killing horde units. 2 modes of fire as well, 4 attacks for each, 2+ to hit, 3/3 damage line. The 8-inch range version overrides cover saves and has torrent 2 inches. The 4-inch version also removes cover saves and overrides light cover for concealed targets. Doubling the distance the average ranged operative must be at to override the conceal. The weakest part of this weapon is the 4 attacks. Even though the damage is mediocre, the hit stat usually makes this weapon always put up a bunch of dice, pretty much guaranteeing damage, but at 4 attacks, this operative may only feel truly useful against low health, low armor enemies. And note that it only has fists for melee. The Choppa equipment would be a strong option for this unit. The Commando Comms Boy is another fist melee user, but the key damage focus is on that Shaka pistol, because who doesn't want a lightning gun? 6 attacks, 4+ to hit, range 8, devastating 2, severe, stun, but with a 1/0 damage line. Not the greatest, certainly more of a stun stick with the benefit of severe almost guaranteeing a crit. This operative also serves as a mission mule. It reduces the APL of mission actions as well as pick up and place marker actions by 1 once during each of its activations. As these all tend to cost 1, usually free. It is also a second APL generator on the field. For the cost of 1 action point, it can give another visible non-squig operative within 6 inches an extra APL until the end of that operative's next activation. Unlike the knob, this action is okay to be taken as a counteract action. Between the Comms Boy and the knob, I feel the KG turn 1 will mostly be about priming units for big actions in the follow-up turn. The Commando Daka Boy brings its fists and a Daka Shuta to the field. 5 attacks for good saturation fire, 4+ to hit, 3/4 damage line. This gun wants to be within 6 inches of an enemy target for the ceaseless benefit. It can also use a 1 AP ability called Daka Dash. This allows 1 dash and shoot to be used for free in any sequence after using the 1 AP on this ability. Remember that if the operative already used dash or shoot in the round, they won't be able to finish this ability, so it wouldn't really be able to be used in that situation. They cannot be in conceal for this and must be outside of enemy control range. They also can't choose a different ranged weapon than the Daka Shuta, so no harpoon or dynamite or grenades. The Commando Grot is a bit of a mission mule. Its 5 wounds will probably keep it in conceal for most of its life. Also, its sneaky Zogger ability will prevent it from having an engage order. The benefit to this is having a form of super conceal. If it is in cover, it cannot be a valid target of ranged attacks regardless of any other rules like Vantage or Seek. The Throat Slitter's ability will work for the Grot, so it can get in close if it wants to swing with that horrible Grot Choppa. It has a 1 AP ability called Grappling Hook. This is awesome. It does have limits though. Charge and fallback can't be used in the same activation. It is considered a reposition, so that can't be used alongside this, and it can't be used in enemy control range. You also can't operate Hatch in the Gallowdark during this, and cannot use a point or end its action in control range of an enemy. What it does, however, is give the Grot the most movement potential possible in the game. All it needs is an open, visible point on a terrain feature. The Grot is removed from the kill zone and returned to a spot within 1 inch horizontally of that point in a location it can be placed. Though the action is treated as reposition, I don't see a limit on distance here. The Grot should be able to, based on vision, move from one side of the board to almost the opposite side in a single turn depending on terrain layout. This won't work on the kill zone floor, but a barricade that 9 times out of 10 an enemy team will put near on an objective could be useful. Victory points wise, this Grot could be the most dangerous operative in the Commando kill team. The Rocket Boy, on the other hand, is another damage saturation unit. Like the Burna, this boy is mostly about its gun. 6 attacks, 4 to hit, 4/5 damage, which is nice. 2 modes, both have Blast 1, which is alright. Not as good as the prior common Blast 2, but 6 attacks and a Blast attack is quite insane. If the operative only uses dash in the activation, it can gain the Ceaseless rule, a solid reroll option for the amount of attacks this thing has. The Slash-A-Boy brings close range, stealthy lethality in peak performance. It comes with throwing knives, 4 attacks, 3+ to hit, 2/5 damage, range 6, silent, so fireable from conceal. Definitely fishing for crits with this one. Its twin choppas have similar attacks and hit rating, but for a 4/5 damage line. Ceaseless and lethal 5 on top of all that makes this model a solid burst of damage. And to go even further beyond, the Dat All You Got ability provides an extra D3 of damage at the end of a fight or retaliate sequence. This is all great, but remember that when fighting, unless the target will definitely get one shot, it usually means this operative will be taking chip damage over time, and with no way to heal, the damage negation ploy for normal attacks could be good to save for this operative. Lastly, the Sniper Boy, the Anti-Crump. Its gun has 3 variants, which has become mildly common for some sniper-style units, but this is basically a heavy machine gun with a scope. 5 attacks, universally, 3 to hit. In the concealed and stationary version, a 3/3 damage line, 3/4 in the sweeping mode. Concealed also carries devastating 2, heavy with no variable, so no movement, silent, so able to be fired from conceal, and a new, fairly common sniper rule, concealed position. This only allows the concealed variant of the attack to be used once, and it must be used as the first ranged attack the sniper attempts, or it will be forfeit. The stationary variant loses silent and concealed position, maintaining the devastating wounds and heavy. In a twist from other snipers, this weapon has a sweeping variant, leaning more into its heavy machine gun origins. This comes with the dash variant of heavy and Torrent 1. Horrifying. A full field bane to all Horde teams. Operative selection wise, this team can take 1 knob of either the Choppa or Claw variant, as well as 9 total operatives. Only the standard Commando Boy can be taken more than once, and the Grot and Squig must both be taken to equal a single unit if you want them. Now, list building wise, there's a little adaptability here. In particular, the Squig and Grot, as well as the Burna Boy, are easy options to rotate out for more potential boys on the field, as the Burna isn't exactly great at killing hard targets, and sometimes the Grot and Squig might not be as effective as you would expect. And Commando Boys coming with access to tactical grenades can be super useful, as they can be further pushed by picking up tactical grenades from the universal list. This could allow 2 to even 3 smoke grenades to be used in a phase potentially, but this is all up to player discretion. Otherwise, these options all feel viable. And if we set our sights over to the approved ops side of the game, these sneaky gits are bound to the realms of infiltration as well as seek and destroy, almost thematic. Now, orks do love crumping, so seek and destroy might feel like a good option to just lean into. Probably solid against horde teams, and with an efficient round of spreading damage, potentially decent when selecting a champion to finish off some high health elites. But don't underplay infiltration. The Kommandos don't really have too many ways to crack the hard outer shells of elite teams, and against some of the more durable among them, seek and destroy missions might be hard to achieve with any kind of efficiency. So, looking through the infiltration side, we have some interesting concepts. A forward-positioned orc could look tasty to a heavy melee operative, so dropping wiretap after pushing up creates a situation where the enemy has to make a choice. Do I charge in and try and kill this orc, sacrificing 2 victory points due to my operative being stuck next to the wiretap and engage? This could almost serve defensively, or maybe the plan isn't even to kill the enemy, just to keep them from scoring while implanting them with orc stuff. As long as you hit 1 new operative a turn for 3 turns with this, you don't even necessarily need to kill them, and then just focus on preventing scoring. All tactically sound options that will just need some experience behind them to make the call, depending on opponent and arena. Time will tell if this team will still hold itself on high, like during the prior form of kill team. But for those looking for an orking good time, this sneaky cunning squad could be for you. But what do you think? Are there any operative interactions that has your mind alight with possibilities? Maybe even some solid matchup potential, or maybe you've experienced some wild games so far. Let us know in the comments below. And remember, there's a Discord linked in the description if you want to keep the conversation going. As always, likes for the like god and subscribes for the subscribe throne. I am Kimmerix, and I'll see you in the next one.